Hey guys, it's Terrell here. This is essentially a response to Phil Jason's response to my whole Naruto pissed off rant, where he quote unquote tells me I'm dead wrong about certain things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play his video and stop it at the points I feel that I need to address. And because I have over a 15-minute limit, this may be a long video depending on how it goes. So let's go.
Alright, man, what's up?
I don't know if you can hear it now.
Game Manic made some of the most retarded statements I heard in a long time. Retarded points. I got a list of failed points he made in that video. With some of his points, well, straight, I will give him that. The whole thing on the Byakugan, I agree with that. They kind of dropped the ball with that. But still, we know that all these three jutsu, like the reason why they descended from the Sage of Six, we know that they descended from the Sage of Six Paths, and we know the origin of.
Oh yeah, the whole eye thing he mentions.
Clan and
I agree with that.
Clan, which I'm gonna get into that later.
First thing I want to mention. Near the end of the video, he explains the eye stuff to me, and someone actually explained it in the comment section. So I'll give them that point, like the whole thing about the Sage of Six Paths and the jutsu that Pain uses to control 6 dead bodies, and they all have the Rinnegan. I understand why all the Jinchuriki has the Rinnegan, and the whole thing about Itachi and Madara stealing eyes during the massacre. I got that much, so I give all those points to that because I wasn't thinking about that. So yeah, those points I agree with. But I think this first point is about the whole Hidan Kage thing. Let me make sure though.
Thing I'm gonna get on. Shout out to Shippuden English Dub. We was talking about this. We was discussing this failed points, and I got a good bit of my points from him.
Most of them are failed though.
From the stuff that I
That's my thing. Most of my points weren't bad.
Some of the stuff I read in the manga. And one of the things he brought up was the whole Hidan and Kakazu meaningless. I mean, think about it. In that arc, talking about Shikamaru didn't need character development.
And let me explain that whole Hidan Kakazu thing, because he's gonna go on to say some things about how Hidan and Kakazu, that it developed Shikamaru, and then it developed Choji and Ino, and then it was necessary, and then Naruto learned a new move. Let me tell you about that arc, and the reason why I said that arc felt meaningless, because of multiple things. For one, Shikamaru's, because he says something that's kind of redundant. He says Shikamaru would have still been it's such a drag and would have been lazy and shit. No, Shikamaru's attitude had already changed since the Sasuke retrieval arc, and that's the first thing about this response, about that part of the response that was really dumb, because that changed as soon as, plus all the, it's such a drag, it's something he just says, period. It's just something he just says. It's just a tagline of his. But he stopped acting like a lazy fucker after the whole Sasuke retrieval arc. That was blatantly explained. I think Tamari helped with that, along with just experiencing it. That whole thing with the Sasuke retrieval arc was when he changed that. So yeah, he didn't need the development here. He didn't get any development. The only thing about this arc that even carries over anything else is the whole Wheel of Fire, the next generation crap, which was something you didn't need to kill Asuma for. It hammers the point home, and let me just explain this real quick. I don't hate that arc. I love that arc. I just don't think, but in terms of actual, necessariness, it's not that necessary. And the whole thing about Naruto learning a new move, he was practicing the move before the before the arc. He was practicing the move without the fight. The fight was something that just happened and just gave him an excuse to use it. But he had already been practicing the move. So there was no point. So that point is kind of invalid because it doesn't really relate to that arc. The thing about that arc in itself is the whole development for Choji and Ino. First off, Ino didn't get any development because Ino didn't really change. Ino didn't change at all. Period. She didn't change. Nothing about her changed. She still fights the same way. Nothing changed. I don't know where that logic came from that Ino changed. Ino didn't change from that death at all. Choji didn't change from that death. And people who say Choji changed, if Choji had changed, then why did he get development when Asuma was revived? What development would Choji have needed to got then if he had changed after his death? He didn't change after his death. He changed when he was brought back, when Asuma was brought back as a zombie. In the fucking development for Choji wasn't even something you needed. Asuma didn't need to die. Like, let's put it this way. Yeah, Kishimoto's hardcore because he killed Asuma. But Asuma's death wasn't necessary in itself because it affects very little. It really does. Like, Choji's development was him just being a pussy about life. You didn't need to kill Choji for that. I mean, you didn't need to kill Asuma for that. And the Wheel of Fire crap, you didn't need to kill him for that either. Now, as I said, I don't hate the arc, and I understand where the arc plays its importance. But as a whole, the arc is kind of pointless. The only things that carry over from that arc is Asuma being a zombie and bullshit Choji development, and the whole speech to Naruto when Jiraiya died. Which, you could easily have had Iruka have that damn speech. Actually, no. He has that fucking speech. But you just don't, but you let Shikamaru as the one to rehammer it. You didn't need Shikamaru to experience death, to go through the Wheel of Fire crap with Kurena's baby. All that didn't need to be done in the way of him dying. You could have easily had Iruka hammer home the message about the whole death of a sensei shit. The Choji development could have easily been done with just Asuma interacting with Choji. It's like Asuma didn't teach him anything until he died. What the fuck? Well, once again, I'm saying the arc is good. It's a good arc. It's just not that necessary. That's my whole thing with that. It seems kind of pointless. So.
Dude, so you want Shikamaru to continue being lazy?
Yeah, I just explained this.
But it's like, plus it gave character development for Ino.
No, it didn't.
Passing it on to the next generation.
You already explained that.
Touch up on that too much.
I already explained
this
that.
This is a Naruto-related video.
So I think this is the next point. I think this is the next point.
Let's move on to the next thing.
Here
him talking about why wasn't all the 5 nations at the Chunin exam. One, the five nations can't stand each other.
Okay. Now, what I did, because for Jason suggested this to me to go back and read chapters, I actually went back and read the chapters. The description of the Chunin exams was for nations to get together, neighboring, because they had Tamari explain what the Chunin exams is, which is essentially, we know that the whole thing was, for Guineans to graduate the Chunins by taking a series of tests. But, Tamari goes into explaining that anybody can come in. Anybody can come in. It had nothing to do with, them hating each other. Any nation could have came in. And it was explained that the nations did that actually as kind of a safeguard for themselves anyway, to see what kind of power the newer generation of each village's ninja would have. So by that logic, it still doesn't make sense why they weren't in there. Now, if I were to take what he's relating, because he's relating the point he's making about this, about why, against my point about why the Kages weren't there, he brings up the 5 Kage Summit arc as the defense. The reason why that doesn't work, and it's actually, and this is where it makes, and if we go this way, it becomes very ambiguous, and it's debatable on either side about why the Kages weren't there, is because certain Kages weren't Kages during the time of Part 1. For example, Raikage wasn't Raikage. Well, see, the Raikage one is the most debatable because we know Raikage fought Minato from the latest chapters. Okay. But we don't know how he felt against Sarutobi. Fuck, we know he respected Minato. So this was before the beginning of Naruto. But we don't know how he felt about Sarutobi. And all the reasons he lists during the Kage Summit arc about not liking about the Leaf Village, about why he didn't trust the Leaf Village, was shit that happened during the Kage Summit arc. I mean, no, not the Kage. Was shit that happened during the exam arc, because he brings up Orochimaru and the whole thing with the Akatsuki there. That's not relatable. The only point he makes that you could potentially use is the fact that all the other villages had Akatsuki members that were from their village. And that's the only thing I can give for that. The Mizukage we can't even do because I don't think the girl was in charge. Like the current Mizukage, I don't think was in charge during Part 1. Because I think the Kage, the Mizukage before her was the one that was in charge. And we don't know how Sarutobi felt against her or him depending on which one was in charge, because we don't fucking know. The Tsuchikage is the only one I could see anyone saying, and even that's debatable, about him using the Akatsuki. But it depends on when each fucking village figured that out. We don't know when the villages figured that out. Because they may have not known. That's the thing. Like, a lot of that shit's ambiguous. So all the assumptions that are made aren't true until Kishimoto goes out and tells they're true. This is the reason why I said, why didn't the other Kage show up? Because we didn't know. They literally left that ambiguous. Like, the reasons you give for them not being there are things that were just recently told to us. Before that, we had no idea. And that was something you could have brought up earlier in the series. Or the Kages in general. Which actually goes into another point about Naruto I really can't stand. Why did it take until B got captured for the Kage summit to even fucking assemble? If anyone didn't realize that. And until that point, no one seemed to give a fuck. And it made no sense. And considering Rakage explains that there were Jinchuriki from each of those nations except for his, the whole point that you make, Phil Jason, about the Akatsuki, they weren't going to attack the Akatsuki because they used the Akatsuki for wars. The Akatsuki went back and killed their fucking Jinchuriki and took them. Well, right, took them, then killed them. Besides that, why wouldn't all bets be off after that? You killed their fucking Jinchuriki. It wasn't like it was payment. They took money for payment. So it made no fucking sense. Why didn't the other villages, come back and fight the fuckers? They had already killed the Jinchuriki, and up to this point, we only know of the Tsuchikage being the only one using the Akatsuki. Because it doesn't say anything. The Mizukage has too much secrecy, so we don't know. The Kazekage, technically, we don't know if Gar's father or any of the previous ones used them. We only know that Tsuchikage used them. That's the whole thing about that. There's too many black holes and plot holes in Naruto for that shit to work, and that's probably one of the main things about it that pisses me off. It's like, there's too much ambiguous cases with that shit. The whole Jinchuriki thing really annoys me just because of that, too. Just because it took B getting captured for them to assemble. Like, you couldn't assemble beforehand with just the Akatsuki running around in themselves. Knowing distrust I could see in terms of Akatsuki is probably... And why would you... It's ridiculous. It's just fucking ridiculous. Also, the point relating to the Gar thing, about the response to my Gar thing, about why couldn't they use a different Jinchuriki instead of Gar? The whole point about they had to collect the tail beasts in a certain order is bullshit for obvious reasons. Because in part 1, they were trying to catch Naruto. Before, they didn't even go after Gar. They were going for Naruto. So there is no order. If there was an order, why did Itachi and Kisame go after Naruto right off the bat? They didn't go after Gar. They went exactly after Naruto. Why Naruto? They were intentionally trying to take Naruto. The only reason why they didn't take Naruto was because of Jiraiya. So that point is bullshit. Because they tried to take Naruto. It's like, oh, we have to do them in a certain order. That's invalid. My whole point against that still stands into the whole casing that when it comes to Tail Beast, you could have used a different Jinchuriki. Because none of that shit with Gar carries over that much. Like, you didn't have to use Gar. Kishimoto chose to use Gar as a fan favorite. Because he didn't want to develop any of the Jinchurikis. And I probably would have cared more about these later fights. That's one. A lot of people say, "Oh, the war is really shitty right now." I wonder why people say the war is really shitty right now. It's because there are characters fighting that we don't really give a shit about, because it's one-sided. Those are the two main reasons. Because it's one-sided, and because the characters we don't give a shit about. You wonder why we don't give a shit about them? Because they were introduced so fucking late in the series. Like, legitimately, almost all the fights we've seen, except for the rehash of fights, like the Zabuza fight, which was really unnecessary. It really was. I'm just saying, there's a lot of problems, but I've already explained that point.
Why? Reason number 2. The nations got into wars with each other. They hated each other.
Yeah, I've already explained that.
and the sound, they were
Yeah,
and started talking, addressing other characters. Like they could have showed more about the other things, like the whole thing with Yukita Ni and stuff like that.
yeah, they could.
But you gotta remember that most of the hidden villages, they do not like Jinchuriki. When
That's bullshit. For one, that's the other thing I need to address. We mean they don't like Jinchuriki. They had them all in their villages. They're used as a source of military strength. That's why Rakage had B use to practice his powers and shit. They were used as military strength. That was the whole purpose of the beast to begin with. They were used as military strength. They don't like the host because they're afraid of the. They don't like the host. They don't like the host, but they didn't. The whole Jinchuriki themselves was needed, and that's just the normal people. That's not even the village people. In the village didn't like the Jinchuriki because they were Jinchuriki, but the people like the higher ups needed them for military strength. So, yeah, the people in the villages didn't like the Jinchuriki, but the higher ups kept them for obvious reasons, for military strength. That was the original purpose of the Jinchuriki.
because the Akatsuki had said whenever they usually went into a land and took the Jinchuriki and from that land and extracted the bijou that the citizens.
Yeah, I already explained
well,
that.
I don't really see anybody strong enough that was in the Sand Village at that point.
Oh yeah, I remember this. Was the other thing. I brought up the whole thing about why is it that the Leaf Village was the only one killing the Akatsuki, and the point he brings up is that he doesn't think there were other people that were strong enough to fight the Akatsuki. Now this is where this one gets a little ambiguous too, because he says that we kind of went out of our way. He said like the Leaf Village went out of their way to like attack the Akatsuki, which really wasn't the whole thing. The Akatsuki was fucking with them. And I brought this up a second ago that pissed me off about the fact that the Akatsuki went back and killed the Tsuchikages and the Mizukages, Jinchurikis, and they don't do anything about it. That's what bugged the shit out of me. Because it made no fucking sense. That, the Leaf Village got pissed. And the Cloud Village got pissed when their Jinchurikis were attacked. But the Mizukage and the Tsuchikage didn't give a shit. And I think he brings up the point that the Tsuchikage, hired the Akatsuki. But as I said, if they went back and killed your Jinchuriki, wouldn't you give a fuck at that point? Wouldn't you give a fuck? And the Mizukage, I believe the whole conspiracy around that dude, not the girl, but the one before her. The one that she thought was under control, that may have been under control by the Akatsuki. Which I believe they were, actually. Or got killed by the Akatsuki from the Kisame flashback, I believe. What? Like, that whole thing with that, it was like... It still didn't make any fucking sense. And then you have a neutral nation, like, who was it, Mifune's neutral nation. We were sitting there going, you're a neutral nation, but you should still give a fuck. And we're fucking with your shit. Like, that's what bugged me about that whole thing about the Akatsuki wouldn't fuck with him because he hired the Akatsuki, but they killed your Jinchuriki. Why would you just still say fuck it after that? The Mizukage, I can kind of understand because hers was controlled. From what she says in the chapters, it was like maybe the previous Mizukage because I believe the previous Mizukage was a Jinchuriki and may have just been under control. That one I could kind of get, kinda. But even then, I'm still like, why wouldn't you go back and get, if they killed your Jinchuriki, why wouldn't you go off on them? The same thing with the Tsuchikage. They killed your Jinchuriki. Regardless if you paid them off for war shit. You didn't pay them off for them to kill your fucking military weapon. What the fuck? That's the other problem I had. What else?
And besides Chiyo, maybe that could have.
Wow, this is like 20 minutes. This is gonna be.
She was chilling, and the other guy was chilling. So yeah, they took Gara and they extracted Gara.
Okay.
How about that? It was like most villages, they hate their.
As I said, that's ambiguous because we didn't know the feelings of certain Kages who were in power at the previous time. Like, we don't know how Minato even rolled with the other ones. Or Saratobi, for that matter, because they don't bring up the fucking Kages. That was the problem. None of this shit would even be in an arc. Like, I literally wouldn't have even mentioned any of this shit if Kishimoto had brought the Kages earlier. Even if they weren't in the tuning exams, you could have still brought up the Kages in other ways. You had Naruto and them doing missions anyway. Why couldn't you bring up the Kages anyway? It didn't even have to be during the tuning exam. That was my main issue with the Kages, was the fact that they're brought up so late in the fucking series. I'm sorry this video is so long, but then again, I have unlimited time, so it doesn't really matter.
LBs. And the lead, and Akatsuki, you gotta remember, Akatsuki was really, was after Naruto. They had already came after Naruto once. So yeah.
See, he actually contradicts himself, because he says before that they need to get the tail beasts in a certain order. And then he mentions this, which contradicts that, because if they needed to get Gar first, then why the hell did they come after Naruto to begin with? They need to get Gar first.
And Elite Village were being you see, that's one of the reasons why Kishimoto having these flashbacks. Because you people not paying attention to the plot. You're not paying attention to the plot. And you want...
Now, he's talking about flashbacks, but most of the flashbacks really have explained things that are kind of straightforward now, or things that we just didn't know, period. Not even paying attention. The only advantage of the recent flashback was is relating to that whole Minato argument and how his relationship with the other villagers was. And even then, the fucking flashback wasn't that goddamn interesting, because it was about characters that, you know, that whole non-brother crap, you didn't need a flashback. Especially a 2-chapter flashback. That was even dumber. You could have, if you needed to do a flashback for Kage, you didn't have to have it last 2 chapters. It could have been 1 chapter, simply. I don't know why the hell. Really. But once again, you know, whatever.
Why he makes these pointless, continuous flashbacks, so maybe y'all could understand the series, because y'all forgetting things. But yeah, I'll repeat it again one last time. The reason why the Leaf took out just about everybody in Akatsuki was because the other nations, with the exception of the Cloud Village, the other nations were using Akatsuki. So they didn't have a problem with Akatsuki.
Which is bullshit, because they killed their own Jinchurikis afterwards, so they made no fucking sense.
When you think about it, the 6th Path of Pain is a jutsu, which a lot...
Okay, now I think the rest of the video is about the 6th Path of Pain, which I've already explained that I do agree with. I understand where he was coming from with that, and someone explained that to me in the comments, so I get that whole point. But that literally, this is 22 minutes, and I want to go ahead and just make my final thoughts. The whole point of that rant was just the fact that the tagline for Naruto, as I said in the other video, was just it's missed opportunities. There are other things they could have done, and it would have made the fucking anime or the manga seem as ambiguous on certain parts. The examples of being ambiguous is the whole Kages not getting along thing, the Kages themselves, the fucking other characters, the minor characters that no one seems to give a shit about because of how late they were introduced in the series. Because people, I mean, fuck, we still want to see Tenten fight. And that has nothing to do with Tenten being... It had nothing to do with Tenten's experience before. We want to see Tenten fight because we've seen her for so fucking long. We like characters more the longer we're around them. We're not around Samoy and fucking Dari and fucking Mifune and Hanzo and who else? People enjoyed the Kakashi fight more than they enjoyed the Amoy fight. We enjoyed the Amoy fight a little bit more because Sai and Kakuro were in it, which are characters that have been previously established. No one really gave a shit about the Dari fight as much. I'm just saying, simply. It's that we didn't give a fuck about certain fights because, I mean, more people were interested in the Asuma fight than the Mifune Hanzo fight, even though I do like that fight. I like the fights. I do, but I'm just saying. That was the main problem with Fairy Tail. I mean, oh wow, I'm out of it. That's the main problem with Naruto. It's just, it makes you not give a shit about certain characters because of how late they're introduced into the series. And then the ambiguousness, you have to start guessing with certain characters. Like, you know, obviously the whole thing I've already mentioned. But, yeah, that's it for the response to the response. I just wanted to get everything out there and explain the issues. And say, I mean, the response wasn't dumb or anything. I'm just saying that was the whole issue with the response. So I went back and clarified some things. But yeah, this video has been going for like 25 minutes. If you watched the whole video, thank you. But anyways, this is Terrell. I'll catch you guys later. Peace.